going to start here in a few minutes. Just letting everybody get logged in, and we will start the presentation fast. I probably opened up about 30 seconds later than I normally do, so I'm going to give everybody a second to get in, and we will start here in about 20 seconds. All right, just going to take a quick look while people are still logging in. If you can, in the chat, if you can just tell me you're seeing my slides with the title on and you're hearing me, that would be appreciated. Just want to make sure that we actually are broadcasting right now. Chat's coming in. Yes, thank you, Mr. Anderson, Scott. All right. I'm going to get started because we got some housekeeping to do as well. So I want to thank everybody for being here today. Feels like I haven't personally presented one of these in a few months. I may be misremembering, but I really looking forward to today's presentation. I really appreciate every time anybody logs in to these. And today I think is a pretty cool one. We are going to be talking about burnout, tax season related burnout, and let's take the taxing out of tax season. How are we going to avoid burnout? And this is kind of a theme we're going to be talking about all year in different aspects, but this bridging the gap theme is something that we're really going to concentrate on. And this one is bridging the gap from burnout to a better firm and a better you. We will have a conference coming up in August, which will be a similar theme as well. And I'll expand on that in a minute. Let's housekeeping, important information here. This is available for CPE. To get CPE, you need to be stay logged in for at least 50 minutes and answer 3 of the 4 polling questions that'll pop up. I will let you know the polling questions are popping up, but please answer those. Just as a warning, if you're not using the Zoom app, and I don't mean on your phone or your iPad or your tablet, there's an app on your computer. Sometimes that blocks the pop-ups. So try to unblock pop-ups. And if you're not seeing the polls pop up, then just put an answer in the chat and we will count you as there for that. Certificates are going to be mailed out to the email address you registered with. Those should go out in 2 to 3 days. We've had a few people that have had those go to their spam or junk folders, so make sure you check that. The slides are going to be uploaded to the chat, and they will be emailed to you with your certificates. That being said, quick, I'm Randy Crabtree, presenting, partner, Tri-Merit, host of the Unique CPA podcast, which has become more than a podcast, a conference, other things. Enough about me. There's just some of the stuff I do. The one thing I do want to highlight is the Accounting Cornerstone Foundation board membership. I will talk to you about that in a second. But a little bit about Tri-Merit. We are a specialty tax firm. We support tax preparers by being an extension of their advisory team, and advisory is extremely important. We'll talk about advisory a little bit as we go today, but we just help you and your clients save money on their tax return. There's the different services. I want to go through this fast. We got a lot of interesting stuff to go over today. Those are the services that we provide, and a couple of ads real quick. I mentioned we are going to have a conference coming up the end of August. 28th is actually arrival date, 29th and 30th. It's going to be at the Lowe's Hotel, which is Chicago, Rosemont, Illinois, just outside of O'Hare. We're going to be talking about ways, kind of like similar to this presentation, ways that we can prioritize our health, find our own success. What does that mean to us? How do we be more efficient, more healthy, mentally and physically, work less, make more? All of these things we can do to be a better profession, a better professional, a better firm, and attract employees into this profession, because honestly, that's an issue that obviously we're dealing with these days. After this presentation, next week, we have a follow-up, and that is Beat Burnout with Integrated Technology and Delegation. So, Dawn Brolin, and if you have not heard Dawn speak, do not miss this one. Dawn is an excellent speaker. She and I will be presenting in a week on this topic. It's a follow-up to this one, gives us some additional information on how we can become more efficient. And then I mentioned one thing I wanted to talk about is Dawn and I, and there's a handful of other, we only put two other people on here, but Dawn and I are part of this new, we just put this together, the Accounting Cornerstone Foundation. This is a nonprofit that is available to send people to conferences. If you have never attended a conference and you don't have the wherewithal to do so, there's an application process. You can see in the bottom there, there's the link to the website, accountingcornerstone.org, where people can submit an application to receive a scholarship to attend conferences. Conferences have been huge for me in my career, and I want to be able to, or we want to be able to send anybody to a conference that would like to go and fulfill their career, make it better, and they just don't have the means to do so. So it's a first conference thing for people. This is a really exciting. The website just went live. We've already received a bunch of donations. We've received a bunch of applications for people interested in attending conference. So take a look at that. All right, enough of the housekeeping. 6 minutes in, we got to get going. Polling question number 1. I will pop this up. Let's get going with a poll right away before we get into the presentation. And in the meantime, while you're answering this poll, answer the poll. There you go. While you're answering this poll, you can scan that QR code and register for next week's webinar if you're interested. So this poll that's popped up right now, do you feel you came through this tax season being as efficient and stress-free as possible? I'm going to end this. We actually have most of you already responding. If you haven't responded, I'm going to give you about 10 more seconds because I want to get into the information here. And all right, I'm about to end this poll. I'll just give you the stats. 22% of you feel that you did, which is great. 78% did not, which is what I expected, that most of us probably think there's things we can do better. I should have put a not applicable just in case you didn't go through tax season, but we did not give that as an option. Okay, here's the gist of what we're talking about today. What do we want to learn in the next 50 minutes here? We want to identify stress, burnout, mental health issues, and specifically in the accounting profession. Why are they there? What is it? What do we need to be aware of? And then obviously you can identify what your own risk factors are. You'll see it as we go here. You'll probably see some things we talk about that you'll think, oh yeah, I've done that. That sounds like me. And what we want to do is we want to then find out ways we can change. So how can we reduce stress? How can we reduce burnout, which is significant? Burnout is not something to play around with, and we'll talk about that. And mental health issues, because mental health issues are something you do not want to play around with. And we want to help you to figure out ways that you can be better, your firm can be better, the people you work with can be better. And so that's my whole goal. That's our whole goal for today. I want to point out one thing. I am extremely excited about this. About halfway through the presentation, one of the people that I normally discuss when I talk about things we can do is going to be with us today, John Garrett. Some people might say I'm obsessed with John Garrett, but his message is so right on. So I'm really looking forward to John. He's going to talk for 3 to 5 minutes about halfway through the presentation. All right, so how are we doing? Seriously, as a profession, how are we doing overall? Well, there's plenty of stats out there. You can see stats all over the place, but I pulled some significant ones out there. Accountabs did a survey in March of 2020, pre-pandemic. Data came out in March in 2020, and at that point, 52% of accounting professionals say they're stressed daily at work. 52%. Now, stress by itself is not necessarily terrible, and we'll talk about that, but 52% are stressed daily. The daily stress is an issue. And then this same survey found that 60% of these people who responded reported more work-related pressure over the past 5 years. And again, pre-pandemic 5 years. AICPA did a survey in 2020, later in the year, And they found out, this was after pandemic started, 34% of CPAs reported feeling more stressed than before the pandemic. Pretty obvious. I mean, we as a profession were responsible for a lot going on back then, PPP and all these other incentives and just trying to help our clients stay in business. And so not surprising, 2019 AICPA did a study, almost half of all US CPAs reported feeling burned out. When we talk about burnout, you'll see that's extremely significant and alarming. And then this is one of the most alarming things, I think. A study that was published in the Journal of Health Economics, which I'm sure we all read daily, and I'm sure it's a great magazine. 25%, I mean, in that survey, they found, or in that study, they found 25 CPAs, tax preparers, EAs, professionals in the accounting space are at a 25% higher risk of depression. We're not talking stress, we're not talking burnout, we're talking depression. We as an industry are at a higher risk of depression. And that's one thing we're going to figure out. We're maybe not solve, but we're going to find ways that we can help with that. All right, so let's dig a little deeper into the definitions of things we're going to talk about today. Stress. Again, I mentioned before, stress by itself is not necessarily a bad thing. Stress, causes you to react. You're driving down the street and the dog runs in front of your car and you step on the brakes, and stress causes you to step on the brakes and avoid hitting the dog, avoid damaging the car, avoid hurting anybody in the car. That stress was good. That caused a positive outcome. There could be some easy stresses at work. Hey, we got to get this done in the next hour, and stress kicks in and you get it done. The problem is the uncontrolled stress. That what we just talked about was acute stress. The uncontrolled stress, the chronic stress, the nonstop stress, that's the problem, and that's what can create burnout. That's what can turn into mental illness or mental health issues. And so the chronic stress is the one that we really need to be the most concerned about. And so why does this happen to us? Why do we have the stress? Why do we have the risk of burnout in tax season specifically, but all year, really? Time pressure is obvious. I mean, we have truncated a big portion of our business into a small portion of the year. The workload obviously has just gotten so large during the 2.5 or 3.5 months that we're in tax season. Client expectations, we too often let clients set the expectations rather than us setting the expectations for the client. We have to watch that, and we'll expand on a lot of these as we go. During tax season, a lot of us have made changes historically, and still there is no work-life balance. There's work, there's no life. That's just the way it is. We don't get to see the family at dinner. We miss a kid's recital, we miss a kid's play, we miss a kid's sporting event. All these things, it becomes work, and we have to be able to control that. And then the work's monotonous. I mean, it's like nonstop. Tax return, tax return, boom, tax return, boom, and it's just over and over and over for this 2.5, 3.5 months, and that could become monotonous, and that can create burnout. And the stakes are high. We're in this high pressure point of our careers, of our season, and the stakes are high. We can't make mistakes. I mean, 30 years ago, the penalties on and I'm aging myself now, the penalties on tax preparers were not nearly what they are today. I mean, just look at what you probably had to deal with this tax season. Look at ERC issues. You probably had clients come to you and found out they claimed an ERC, and now you got to go decide if you need to amend that tax return, and AICPA and IRS and insurance companies basically came out and told you can't amend that return if you don't feel that was an accurate ERC. If you do, now all of a sudden you're at risk for penalties, and you didn't even go out and claim that money. You didn't do this for them. So the stakes are high. Another reason that burnout can come in. Seasonality obviously goes with workload and time pressure. Can we stretch out that seasonality? I think that's important. Lack of staff, sure, everybody's dealing with that. Do we have to have professionals do everything? Do we have to have a CPA, an EA, an accounting professional do everything? No, we can have support staff do a lot of tasks that make our life easier. We'll talk about that too. And boy, during tax season, I'll guarantee you, most of you ignore your self-care. Now, hopefully some of you don't, but your eating habits change. Someone's going out and they get McDonald's, not to, talk bad about McDonald's, but fast food to get, you're not eating your salads, you're getting your exercise, and you're just ignoring the self-care because you got to get this done. The next tax return, I have April 15th, and once I get there, I'm fine. And then we ignore the fact that we might be struggling with something because I need to power through it, which we're going to see how bad that is in a second. But I just need to power through this because April 15th comes and boom, I'll be normal again. And we all know I've been through tax seasons. I've been through plenty of tax seasons, probably more tax seasons than most of you. And that doesn't happen. There's another deadline. There's another thing. There's a payroll tax return, a sales tax return. There's 990 returns. There's September 15th. There's October 15th. It's things do not allow you to get caught up just because we've been past April 15th. And so what will this nonstop stress do to us then? Well, it can turn into mental health issues, mental illness. This burnout obviously is the first step in my mind. But the next step is, anxiety, depression, probably too common in our profession. If this stress is uncontrolled for a significant part of time, and if it creates some kind of mental illness, that is not a place you want to be. That affects your thinking, your feeling, your behavior, your mood. It controls your life. And I'm going to share you a story with you in a minute of my personal past, very fortunate past struggles with mental illness that we're going to go into, but then we're going to find the solutions. We're going to end with the positive. How do we look at things better? How do we be better at what we're doing? And so again, mental illness, that takes control. There's all of a sudden somebody else that's controlling your thoughts and behaviors, and that's what happened to me. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But this is extremely important, because what we think is, I just got to get through April 15th, and then this chronic stress, this nonstop stress is going to go away, and then I'll be good again. But what we don't know, or some of you may not know, and I'm guessing most of you don't know, that this uncontrolled stress, this can actually change your brain. It can have negative effects on your brain. It can have create chemical imbalances in your brain. Chemical imbalances can obviously lead to mental illness. It actually can structurally change your brain. Chronic stress, there's signals that are going through your brain. This chronic stress can structurally shrink the size of your brain. Your thinking can be impaired. It can obviously create emotional and mental health issues, and actually physical issues as well, physical health consequences. So it's not just hey, I got the stress, I just get through it and everything's fine. No, this can cause changes to you physically. And then if we do have this anxiety, depression, unfortunately too common in our profession, but there's just to list a few, there's other mental illnesses that are there, and not everybody that has a mental illness or has burnout is specifically originated from work, but I'll almost always guarantee work's going to amplify it. That's what happened to me. Work's going to make it tougher. You're going to have more stress at work, and that's going to make it harder to come out of these issues that you may be going through. All right, so let's account for burnout then. We talked stress, we brought burnout into it, but let's dig deeper into what really burnout is. And burnout, pretty much across the board, has the same definition. Everywhere that I should have said this at the beginning, and I didn't, but we're only 20 minutes in. I am not a healthcare professional. I have an experience I can share. I'm good at Google searching. and I'm good at Chat GPT. And so I can research things there. And obviously, anywhere you research, you want to verify the information. But everywhere you look on the definition of burnout, it's pretty much this exact definition everywhere. And so I'm going to read it word for, well, most likely word for word. Burnout is a syndrome conceptualized as resulting from chronic workplace stress. It's workplace. Burnout is in other places. It's chronic, which we define, workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. And there's really three areas that'll conceptualize this or categorize that you're having issues with burnout. One, you're feeling energy depletion. You're exhausted. You're feeling this increased distance from your job. You're negative and cynical about what you're doing. And you just become less efficient, which we don't need less efficiency during tax season. That is not going to help us at all. And so if you're feeling any of those or a combination of those, this is something that we want to address. So this is something we want to find solutions for. And then why do we fall into this trap? I mean, other than what we talked about, what we go through during tax season, what else drives us as professionals in the accounting space? One, we all at some level got into this because we wanted to help others. We have that mindset. We are kind of service related. It's just what we do. We want to help everybody. We see that there's problems. We know the solutions. We want to fix them. We want to help, this business thrive. We want to help this family save money to send their kids to college. Those are all noble causes. The problem is we want to do this for everybody, and we don't say no. We don't weed out our client base. We don't find the clients that fit our passions the way that we probably should. And so it's just keep going. And then because of that, this to-do list never shrinks. It grows and grows and grows. And so what do we do then? We're like, well, I'm just going to work harder. I'll work longer. This to-do list will shrink if I just put in more hours. If I start working Saturday, and then all of a sudden, if I start working Sunday, and if I start to work at 10 o'clock at night, and I guarantee you, this to-do list doesn't shrink. It just is not going to happen. That's not a solution, but that's a mindset that a lot of us have. And then another thing that we do, and I've been guilty of all of these, I've been guilty of every one of these, is I'll just do it. You're reviewing a tax return, and what happens? Well, there's an error. Well, I'm going to fix that error because you know what? I just need to get this return out the door. Let's get this in the client's hands. Let's get the signature. Let's get it billed, and let's get on to the next one. And then you get another one across your desk, and the same error occurs. And it's like, well, I'll just do it. I just got to get this out the door. And again, and again. And if you don't go back to the person that was working on this and teach them, that's going to keep going. But in your mind, it's like, well, let's get out the door. But every time you spend the 2 to 5 minutes doing that, you could have spent 15 minutes just to go fix the problem at the source. And now you are more efficient with your time. So these, and believe me, maybe not all of you do all of these things. I'll guarantee you, all of you do some of these things that we've talked about today. And if we change one thing, we change two things, we just overall become much more efficient. Other things we do that'll affect others we work with, a lot of those will affect us. We just model bad behavior, unhealthy work habits. And I know you're thinking tax season, I have to come in early. I have to leave late. I have to work weekends. And maybe you feel you do. I don't think you do. We'll talk about it, at least not to the level that most of you do. I'm not calling you out. Most of you means me. That means all of us. But what we do then is we model that behavior. We've just now taught the people coming up that this is what it has to be. This is how you do it. This is our profession. And I will call out Big Four. I mean, you hear stories that, hey, you come in, you got to work 2,800 hours a year, or whatever it is. And so they set this perception that this is our profession, and it doesn't have to be. There's so many people that will leave, let's say, Big Four, and sorry to call out Big Four, but I think that's a big part of where the problem starts. And they leave and they want to start their own firm, and they think they're going to do things a different way, and then they just model that same behavior, and then that gets passed down. again, we're talking tax season, but sending emails out at all hours of the day and Teams messages and text messages. We're again modeling this behavior that then everybody realizes that there thinks this is how we have to do it. This is what I need to do to be successful in this business. And again, you don't. There has to be a time when you turn off. And we're going to talk about turning off and how you do that. And all these things we're talking about, our brain, we talked about how amazing the brain is and what it can do on the negative, but there's positives. We can train our brain to be healthier. We can train to let go of things that we don't need to work on. We can train our brain not to have us wake up at 3 a.m. and think of that. What am I supposed to do tomorrow? We can make changes to that. And then setting unrealistic expectations is an issue as well. All right. Now, we talked about all this. What is the risk to not just be stress, not just be uncontrolled stress, not just be burnout, but actually turn into mental illness? And the uncontrolled stress can do that. Chemical imbalances can do that, which we already learned stress can create. Loneliness can create these mental health risks in us. We're sitting in tax season and we're the only one there, and it's 10 o'clock at night and we're still at our desk and we're missing our family, creating this loneliness. And then, this isn't tax season related, this is my story related. Having a serious medical condition can obviously be a risk factor for mental health. And that's what happened to me. I'm going to share this quickly. So that picture there, that is me about 5 hours after having a stroke. So about 9 years ago, I had a stroke. I am like the poster child for stroke survivors. When the stroke happened to me, I lost the ability to speak. My whole left side went dead. I was very fortunate that I got to the hospital fast and things started to resolve even as early as in the ambulance. And so I actually left the hospital the next day and I could walk and I could talk. I had numbness still on my left side, but I am like, you don't recover from a stroke like that. I am not the norm. And so why would this create some kind of mental illness in me? Well, 4 days later, and Nick Pantaleo, who's on this presentation with us, won't be talking today, but 4 days later, I went into the office and Nick was in the office and all of a sudden I wasn't feeling good. And he took me to the doctor. Mistake. I should have said, take me to the hospital. He took me to the doctor and I had a second stroke and got to the hospital, very small second stroke, but that started the path. That was my trigger. That was my stressor for mental illness, like nonstop deadlines, like bad clients, like clients you don't want to see the email from or the phone call from or the text message from, a return that is just, you've been dreading doing. For me, the trigger was, I have a dizziness in my brain. Boom, I'm going to die. I'm feeling a little twinge, and you all feel this. Every day we feel a twinge. Most of us don't even know. For me, that was a trigger. I'm going to die this time. I can't be lucky 3 times in a row. I'm going to be disabled. I'm not going to see my kids graduate college. I'm never going to see grandkids. What's my wife going to do? Have I set everything up so she's okay? All these things start running through your mind just from a little trigger, just a little dizziness. I've probably been dizzy a little bit talking to you today, but all of a sudden that started building up. And this is where my brain started changing. And so what did this do? This turned into PTSD. Boom, turned into panic attacks, which I didn't even know what those were until this started happening. And then turned into depression, which I personally didn't acknowledge at the time. I just would tell my wife I'm having a melancholy feeling, but the depression was just this hopeless feeling. What's the point? I'm going to die anyways. And my brain then, like I was telling you about mental illness, my brain was in control. I wasn't really in control. And so that was going on with me. That was caused by a significant medical issue. But work amplified that. Some people will argue work created the stroke. I don't think I can say that. It may have contributed to me having a stroke, but it definitely amplified the after effects of mental. At the time, we were on this growth path, and we knew this growth path was coming. It was just based on things Congress did, changes, and I didn't feel prepared for that, and so that would amplify the effects I would go on. I'd be at a conference and I'd feel more stress, and all of a sudden the panic attack would come in. The positive thing is I didn't hide this, and this is important. You can't just power through these things. I can't power through tax season because your brain needs time to rest and recuperate. And so I didn't hide this from my family. I didn't hide it from my friends for most things. The deep, dark things, I probably didn't tell anybody at the time. I have opened up more on those now. I don't think we have time to go into that at this point. But for me, it was a matter of, and this could be for everybody, it was a matter of just seeing a counselor, seeing a therapist. I had to talk to somebody. My wife and I talked about this, and we decided you just need to go talk to somebody and find out what's going on inside your head. And so I did that. The first therapist, and you'll probably find this funny, and I probably needed a second polling question here in a second. The first counselor I went to was great. But her solution was, well, Randy, don't worry about it because you're not in control. So whatever happens, happens. And I'm like, do you know I'm a CPA? You know, that's what we do. We control things. We help people. You're telling me I can't help myself. And so the point is, every counselor, every therapist is maybe not a good fit for you. For me, the third therapist, I don't remember the second, don't know why. The third therapist just did something for me. She made me realize that I could take control of something, whether it's just the way I acted. But what happened was, after seeing her a handful of times, I was sitting in my melancholy place at home. And this was not a short process. We're 4 years into this now. But I looked at myself in the mirror, at my head, which I didn't feel I was in control of. And I swore, which I don't normally do, and I'm not going to right now, but I swore to myself and I said, F you, you're not real. Get out of my head. I am not listening to you anymore. F you, you're not real. Get out of my head. I'm not listening to you anymore. And I just kept saying that. And it started to change. I started to somehow realize I can make changes. I can't keep doing the same thing I'm doing. I can't keep thinking that tax season is going to get easier and easier. I can't keep doing the same thing I'm doing. I had to make changes. And for me, after this started to feel better, I realized I wasn't equipped to be managing partner of our firm. That wasn't my passions. That wasn't my identity. That wasn't my skill. I love specialty tax. I love education. Now let's get into that. Let's start doing education as part of what I really do. So I'm not going to go into that story, but I made changes that took me out of situations that put stress in my life. And I think one of the biggest things you can do is share your story. And that's why I love sharing this. But let's get on to polling question number 2 right now. Let me pop this up, and then we're going to get into solutions. Polling question number 2 is up right now. Have you or anyone you know struggle with any form of mental illness, i.e. depression, anxiety, etc.? While you're answering that, I'm just going to let you know on the screen is another QR code. If you have any interest in our conference, a lot of our conference is going to be talking about, better mental, physical health, better efficiencies within our practice. How do we bill more, work less, be more efficient, build a better practice, find our own success, because someone else's definition of success is not necessarily our definition. So if you're interested in that conference, scan it, take a look, see what you see. We are at 90% participated in this question. I would like another answer or 2 before I close, but we need to move on. So I'm closing polling question number 2 right now. And 97% of you either have or know somebody that struggled with some kind of form of mental illness. I mean, obviously we all know a lot of people, but that's a significant number. And that's why I think this is so important to have this discussion today. All right. Now, has burnout affected you? We talked about this. Are you feeling sad, down, confused? I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these. I think you get the point. Are you going through mood swings, withdrawal from friends, significant tiredness? You or somebody you work with? Is this happening to? Do you or somebody you work with feel like you have this perpetual sense of you forgetting something? You know, this is what happens. You wake up at 3 a.m. and you know, oh, what am I going to work on tomorrow? You're at a point where you're just thinking, well, I'm just letting time pass by because, you know, I'm not going to get anywhere. I just have to power through whatever I'm doing now. I'm too busy. This to-do list won't go away. You know, I'm getting distracted. That is such a common thing with the way we are now with phones and texts and emails and everything else. And if you decide that, hey, I'm putting my dreams on the shelf, I just need to count down the next 10 years, 15 years, 20 years till I retire, and that's it. These are all concerns that maybe you're dealing with some form of burnout. So let's all take control back before it breaks you. Let's break burnout. Let's get rid of burnout. Let's figure out ways we can do that. And simple things, because I don't want you to get overwhelmed with what we're going to talk about now, but simple things. What can we do to be better? And again, remember, your brain needs rest. And you're going to think, I can't get away from my desk, but you can, because just recharge for 5-10 minutes a day is extremely important. Just like your body needs rest at night, your brain needs rest during the day. So go for a walk during work hours. Do it, even though it's tax season, do it. 10 minutes, leave your phone behind. Just disconnect from the desk for a minute. Don't eat there. And I know you're all thinking, yeah, but I need to get work done. No, you're going to be less efficient if you don't do these things. Avoid job stressors. These are little things. Do one of these, do two of these. Just try to start to implement some of these things. Reduce your exposure to job stressors. That may be a client. It's time to get rid of that client. It may be somebody you work with. Doesn't mean you have to fire or you have to leave your job, but maybe you just work in a different department or you don't get it, you know, you don't work together anymore. It's that client, it's whatever. Try to reduce those stressors. I talked to somebody recently and he identified stressors and he got rid of them in his life. And he says he is so much better for that, for getting rid of this one thing that he did at work. Get plenty of rest. We'll talk about ways that you can do that, but sleep is important. You know, 3-4 hours, unless you're Randy Johnston, who for some reason thinks he doesn't have to sleep. And I believe him because he's got so much energy, but get plenty of rest. Take breaks during the day, get a full night's sleep, prioritize exercise and eating right. I mean, that is so important. It can't be, I'm going to ignore exercise during tax season because there's just too much work to do, because you're going to be so much less efficient. I exercise just about every morning. And believe me, I have so much more energy from doing that. And then even meditate. Simple little things. Take 5 minutes to just listen to your breathing, just to clear your mind. All these little things can be mind refreshers, brain refreshers for you. And again, I'm not going to read through the slide, but there's science out there that shows that your brain needs these times away. All right, we're going to get into bigger things we can do now. And I am extremely excited to let John Garrett come in now. John, if you want to unmute and get on camera. And John, just to let you know, and I think he may disagree, but I'm going to call John a friend. And what John says and does with his whole concept of what you're in is so important. And I'm so thrilled to let John be here, or that John agreed to be here to go through the slide that I normally go through. So John, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Oh, no, I appreciate it, Randy. And yeah, I'm glad that I'm not one of the stressors that you decided to cut out of your life. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's so crucial to just take a moment and just think about just who you are. And sure, accounting is what you do, but who you are is so much deeper and richer than that. And you have a job title, but behind that job title is a human being. that's bigger and cooler and more interesting than just the job title. And if you go even deeper inside that human is a soul, and what lights your soul up. And people feel guilted into saying, accounting, more accounting, and you're lying. You're lying. I mean, for Randy, it's beer. For me, it's college football and concerts. For other people, it's ballet or, playing the piano or volunteering somewhere, or, those hobbies and passions outside of work. And that's really where what's your and comes in. You're an accountant and a beer connoisseur, an accountant and something else. And it's so easy for us to forget that we have these other dimensions to who we are as a person, for ourselves, but also for the people that work around us. And so that's why I wrote the book, and I appreciate the cover there. And in the book, I talk about the research that I've done, where 92% of professionals have a hobby or passion they regularly do outside of work. So that means that the stereotypical accountant isn't the terrible joke of, the extroverted accountant stares at your shoes instead of his own. No, that's stupid. That's totally stupid, because no one's like that. And so, there's other dimensions to who we are and the people around us. So if you find out what those things are, it lights people up. It allows you to make sure that you're doing your but it also makes sure that the people around you are doing theirs too. Because it's so short-sighted to think that I need to take this time and do work. It's like, no, sometimes you can take an hour and go do something that lights you up. Because if you're not doing your you're not living your best life. And if you're not living your best life, you're not going to be doing your best work. And so it's really making sure that you do that. And there was even research done by Tom Rath, who wrote the Strength Finder series. But my favorite book of his is Vital Friends. And in that research for that book, he found that 96% of professionals who have a hobby or a passion outside of work, 96% of people who have 3 close friends at work are more satisfied with their lives. So that's deep. They're more satisfied with their life, not more satisfied with your job. 3 close friends at work, you're more satisfied with your life. It actually spills over into all of everything that you do. And so just finding out about those people around you, you're around these people more waking hours than your family and friends. So why would you not know about them and what truly lights them up, and then making sure that they're doing those things? And that's where what's your comes in. And it's just a simple phrase of just, what do you like to do outside of work? And family, not an answer. What do you do with your family? I need an ing word here. And I even saw a comment in the chat earlier of bringing up any sort of mental health issue at work could be detrimental to your career. And I just got to say that you're at the wrong place. If someone that you work with or for doesn't care about you as a person, then you should not work there. I mean, I'll just say it straight out, because if they don't care about you, they hired all of you. They hired all of John. So they need to nurture and shine a light on all of me. And so for so long in the accounting profession, especially, we only focus on the continuing education credits for the technical skills. And yet we don't focus on the continuing education credits for being a better human and making John flourish. And if we focused more on those things, then I think that the technical skills side would take care of itself. And we'd be much better at our jobs and much better at serving clients and stay longer and be more engaged in our careers. So just take a moment to just ask yourself, what's my and maybe share it, or put a little memento behind you on your wall, or in your office, or ask someone around you, just, hey, what do you like to do outside of work? What lights you up? And if they say more work, just tell them they're lying, and then say, no, really, what is it? And then if they say family, be like, I need an ing word. What do you do with your family? And you just find out how awesome the group of people around you really is. So feel free to reach out. and connect on LinkedIn or Twitter or what have you, or you can check out the book as well. But I just appreciate Randy spreading this message and wanting me to come on to make sure he didn't say it wrong. So thanks so much for that. I'm just teasing, but I appreciate it. And yeah, look forward to all the good work that you're doing. So thanks. And also what Tri-Merit's doing. After working with them, they changed their website, and on their bios, it's more human now. And you know, on LinkedIn, you can see people talking about, you know, new employees, and it shares their "and" right there in the bio. And that's just more interesting and more fascinating to understand the person behind the job title.
Well, thank you, John. He was much better at this portion of the presentation than I was, so I appreciate you being here.
I did write the book, so I mean, there is that. So,
that may have something
Randy.
to do with
I
that.
appreciate it, man.
Yep, thanks, John. And I'm going to launch poll number 3 while I talk about John here for a minute. But polling question 3 is now up. And have you taken advantage of automation and delegation as much as possible in your business? This is, I think, extremely important. We are going to have the follow-up next week, which is going to be talking about delegation and automation and how we create our tech stacks to make us more efficient, how we delegate portions of what we're doing to give us more time for these high value, high brain value functions that we're working on. And so polling question 3 up real quick. While this is up for another minute, I'm going to talk about John for a second. So John will be speaking at the conference that we're holding in August. He's going to do his hour presentation on some of the things you heard today. If nothing else, you have to come to the conference for that. John is so interesting, informative. I like I said, I'm obsessed. If you ever listen to the Unique CPA podcast, my podcast, John has more mentioned on that podcast than anybody else, because I think it's such an important message that he is sharing with what you're in. All right, I'm going to close polling question number 3, and about 60% of you do not feel that you have adequately automated and delegated parts of your tasks within your business. All right, let's move on now. That was one of the things we can do, and I think that's an extremely important thing that we can do. That's why we put that first. But there's other people that I've talked to over the years, and they've explained to me what they do to be more efficient. And Courtney Durandi is a managing partner of a CPA firm in Iowa. And Courtney years ago was looking at herself and thinking, I just don't have time. I'm not going to be able to get everything done. She was in the trap that a lot of us are in. And what she did is she searched out some solutions. And I think this is, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but you can look up Courtney and see videos of her presenting on this. You can also look up Michael Hyatt, who is the Free to Focus book, Full Focus System. And what this does, Courtney started following this system. And I'm picking a number, I don't know what it was, but she was working 60, 65 hours a week, 3-4 years ago during tax season, 70 hours, whatever it was, never felt she could catch up, always felt behind, constantly had things in her head that she was thinking about, reacting to phone calls, reacting to messages. And what she decided to do is, I'm going to block out time. I'm going to look at where my best efficient time is, where I have my most energy, and that time's blocked off of my calendar. And everybody in the firm knows that this time is blocked off of my calendar. And that's where I'm going to use that time for my high brain power functions. There's other parts of the day where you're tired. And what she does then is she opens that up for returning phone calls, returning emails, having internal meetings. And in addition, she shrunk her to-do list. She still has the to-do list, but now she only concentrates on what are daily 3 things she has to get done, or her weekly 3, or her monthly goals. She truncates that so she can ignore. She's training her brain to forget about these other things. They don't have the deadline that these main ones do, or she's going to delegate those to someone else. And after she did this, what she determined is, you know what, this has been so successful for me. Let's implement this for the firm. And I'm going to be talking to her shortly, but the goal was this tax season, and I'm guessing that they stuck to it, because I saw Courtney taking multiple vacations during tax season. They set a program in place this year, well, before this year, but everybody started following the system. This year, You were not allowed to. It wasn't any requirement. You were not allowed to work more than 45 hours a week during tax season. And they've been studying this for the last 3 years. They've become more efficient following the system. They've built more, become more profitable by working less, by just taking advantage of the time more efficiently within their practice. And so for her, it's been great. Jeremy Clapton from Upstream Academy does the same thing. He swears by it. Michael Hyatt, take a look. This is something we can do, we can implement to figure out ways that we can be more efficient. Right size your firm. You all probably know Jennifer Wilson. You know, she talks about this all the time. Eliminate those stressors that cause triggers, that cause your brain to then stress out and potentially even shrink. Eliminate the bad clients. There is so much work out there right now. You don't have to help everybody. You can get out of that mindset of I have to help everybody. So right size your firm. Every year, look at, certain clients that are time drainers. That are stress triggers in your life, and get rid of those. And if you do that, I'll guarantee you, if you have a staff, they are going to be so thrilled that you just got rid of this client that has been so obnoxious to them or whatever. So right size your firm. And this one is extremely important. I probably said extremely a lot, but all of these things are. Brian Cush, who's been on the podcast, he did a webinar for us. I'm going to truncate his hour presentation into 3 minutes or less here because we are running out of time. But disconnect at the end of the day. This is going to train your brain to shut down. You're not going to wake up at 3 a.m. anymore thinking about what I have to do in the morning. And so by disconnecting, there's 3 things he says you go through at the end of each day. 1, bookmark your work. You're closing up for the day, whether your office is at home, whether you're at the office, wherever you are, you bookmark what you're working on. And now all of a sudden you've already eliminated, I don't have to think about what I do tomorrow morning because it's already written there. I know these are the 3 projects. If you follow Courtney, these are the 3 projects I need to get done tomorrow. It's bookmark, it's ready to go. In addition, come up with an instead of plan. Instead of thinking about work tonight, instead of checking my email at 8 o'clock at night, and instead of sending texts out at 10 o'clock at night, I know when I leave, when I shut down, after I bookmark my work, I am going to go home. I'm going to read a book. I'm going to go home. I'm going to watch this movie. I'm going to go home. I'm going to go see a play, whatever. Have a plan to tell yourself, yeah, I'm not going to have to think about work because I'm going to do this when I get home. And then have a mental shutdown routine, a practice, like in the picture here. Boom, just closing your computer. Maybe it's saying a prayer. Maybe it's meditating. Maybe it's doing jumping jacks. Whatever it is, have a routine that now you're training yourself. And do this for 2 weeks. Everybody says, 2 weeks, you do something, becomes a habit. Do this for 2 weeks. Your brain's going to get reprogrammed. You're going to stop having these stressors nonstop. You bookmark your work, you have a standard plan, and you do a physical and mental shutdown at the end of the day. And we did polling question number 3 already. Let me come up with a few other things. Stop letting clients set the expectations. You set the expectations on clients. Clients may hate extensions, but if you start doing tax planning proactively, you're not going to be surprised. Stretch out tax season, truncate make the time lower during tax season and spread it out more. If you're planning during the year, extension's not a big deal. There's no reason we have to file by March 15th or April 15th. There is none other than your client says, I want it done by then. I was going to swear a second. Forget what they say, because who cares? If they're that problem client, then you don't deal with them. Set the expectations up front. If you're in a discovery call for a new client, set those expectations. You see any red flag with a new client, that's one red flag. That means that's the tip of the iceberg. There's going to be a lot more there. Don't take on that client. Set limitations. Don't take on new clients after a certain date. That's just going to cause issues during tax season. Set deadlines. Boom, you have to have everything in by March or by whatever, March 1st for us to get your 1040 done. If it's not, it's an automatic extension. In fact, we're sending that extension out on March 1st. Set boundaries. You be in charge of the practice. Don't let your clients be in charge of that practice, and redefine your worth. Develop a niche, and you can do this simply, developing a niche. You can start with one client. If you started your firm and you just built it because of revenue and you took on every client, which is not uncommon, it's what I did. If you bring on any client that will pay you, well, you probably didn't create a niche, but maybe you've decided, I love the restaurant industry. Those are the clients I like working with most. Start trying to build off restaurants. Show your expertise and your passion. Like John said, let your passion of restaurants show through into your business. Stop undervaluing your services. I'll guarantee you probably all raised prices. You probably got no negative response from your clients. Keep doing that, because we all undervalue. We're always afraid that we're going to get clients mad that we're billing them too much. Don't worry about that. Incorporate advisory into that. Like I said, tax plan all year long. Don't be a reporter of taxes, be an effector of taxes. Stop selling hours. If we're selling hours, that puts us in the trap of, well, I need to work more to make more, so I'm going to sit at my desk longer because I can bill more hours, and that's how I make more money, and that's how I be successful, and that's how I've been modeled. This behavior has been shown to me over the years. Stop doing that. Value bill, subscription price, and then automate as much as you possibly can. And that's what Dawn's going to start to present on next week, is the automation and delegation. These are just some of the learning objectives from what she's going to talk about in next week's presentation, but definitely log into that. And then if you have a practice, if it's not just you, just be aware. You may think that you're doing things that are good mentally for your employees. There's been plenty of surveys out there that show, hey, benefit leaders or leaders in the company think that we are putting these resources out there to help employees. And when the same company's employees are being surveyed, there's a huge disconnect on those. So maybe you do an anonymous survey and ask individuals within the business what they think we're doing, and are you doing things to support them mentally, support them from the stress standpoint, and other aspects. There's more in here. I put the rest of this in here because you're going to get these slides just so you can see them. Just be aware, one of the biggest things you can do is share if you're struggling. As John talked about, having stress, having some burnout, having mental illness is not a sign of weakness. That's something you need to address. You can't bury that. That just causes more issues within you internally and within the company. I'll tell you one thing. I was doing a version of this presentation for a big CPA firm recently. And when I finished, the managing partner came up and started to share his story and his family story of dealing with depression. That vulnerability, I mean, immediately, obviously, he was crying. I was crying. We all were crying. But being vulnerable, sharing his story, keeping this from being a stigma. We don't have to hide this in the corner. When I went through that poll asking how many people know somebody that's gone through mental illness, 97% of you said yes. This shouldn't be hidden in the corner. This is not something to ignore. Share your story, be vulnerable, because I'll guarantee you, his doors open to any of those employees, and I'll guarantee you people came in and talked to him after that. And that is a more open sharing your and environment because he was vulnerable with that story. Let me put on polling question number 4. And you can see, I get a little passionate about this. Do you plan to make changes to be more efficient firm before next tax season? And I didn't even talk about this, but I know what happens because I've been there. We all think we're going to do this, and then we take a month off to recuperate, and then another deadline hits, and then it's December, and we've done nothing, and then we think, oh, I'll just go through one more tax season like this. Don't do that. Start to implement things today, because it's going to be better for you. It's going to be better for your firm. It's going to be better for your clients, and it's going to be better for your bottom line. All those things are going to kick in if you start to implement things. There was so much we could have went over today. There is more in the slide deck as well. if you have any questions anytime, every time I do a presentation like this, someone reaches out to me with their story, and I am all open to listen, because one of the biggest things you could do if someone's struggling is listen, and be part of the solution. So I'm going to end this poll. 97% of you say you are planning to do put things in place to become a more efficient firm next year. With that being said, like I said, there is more things in here. Just the slides. Don't forget about the conference. Don't forget, if you would, at a minimum, go look at this website. You'll have these slides, but the accountingcornerstone.org, we're looking for donations, and we're looking for people to submit applications if they're interested in attending. And we have certain conferences that are listed already. Up there, Scaling New Heights is the one that's coming up soonest, but the Unique CPA conference is out there. QuickBooks Connect is out there, and there's some others that I can't think of off the top of my head. But if there's anybody you know that would like to attend their first conference and doesn't have the wherewithal to do so, please go to that website and take a look. And don't forget about next week's presentation, where Dawn is an amazing presenter. Don't miss what Dawn has to say. And thank you. I really appreciate you all being here. I'm a couple seconds over, so I'm going to end. And again, thanks everybody for being here.